Snow across Scotland, blustery winds, showery rain pushing northwards. That's what we were dealing with this afternoon across the United Kingdom. I've examined the latest data from the Met Office, and we're re-seeing bands of showery rain that have been moving northwards throughout the afternoon. The conditions are rather unsettled, affecting most areas nationwide. Let me break down what's happening and what you need to know. Right now, the contrast across the country is noteworthy. Here in London, temperatures are sitting around 10 to 11 degrees Celsius this afternoon, with lows of about 8 degrees. That's actually quite mild for January, slightly above the seasonal average. Compare that to what's happening further north, and you will see the picture is rather different. Manchester, Birmingham, and Leeds are experiencing cooler conditions, with temperatures hovering around 6 degrees. Liverpool is a touch warmer at 7 to 8 degrees. But it is Scotland where we're re-seeing the chilliest conditions. Temperatures are ranging from 6 to 8 degrees across much of the country, and on the higher ground we are not just seeing rain but also snow. The southeast of Scotland has been dealing with particularly persistent and heavy rainfall. This isn't a brief shower situation. The rain has been rather relentless, and it looks set to continue into this evening. For those of you in that region, you've been experiencing some challenging conditions, and I'm afraid there's more to come before things settle down. Now, let's talk about the wind. This is a notable feature today. Strong winds are affecting most regions, with coastal areas experiencing gales in places. Average wind speeds are sitting around 19 kilometers per hour, but gusts are considerably higher in exposed locations. This is making it feel rather colder than the actual temperature would suggest. Factor in the wind chill, and that 6 degrees in Manchester feels more like 2 or 3. Humidity levels are quite high today, sitting between 83 and 85%. This is contributing to that damp and uncomfortable feel, particularly when combined with the rainfall. It's the sort of day where you step outside and the air feels heavy, moisture clinging to everything. In terms of visibility and sunshine, we are seeing very little brightness this afternoon. The thick cloud cover and rain mean conditions are rather grey across most areas. This is typical for January in the United Kingdom. On average, London typically sees only about 2 hours of bright sunshine per day during this month, which is just 19% of daylight hours. So if you've been feeling like the days are particularly gloomy, that's backed up by the data. Looking at the meteorological situation, we've got a rather active pattern at the moment. These bands of showery rain are associated with Atlantic depressions moving across the British Isles. The jet stream is positioned in such a way that it's steering these low-pressure systems directly towards us, one after another. This is classic January weather for the UK, but it's still worth understanding what's driving it. The ECMWF model and the UKMO model are in strong agreement on the continuation of this unsettled pattern through to the weekend. When both models align like this, it gives us high confidence in the forecast. The GFS model, the American model, is showing a similar picture, though with slightly different timing on some of the shower bands. But the overall message is consistent, more of the same for the next several days. Tonight, we are expecting continued cloudy and breezy conditions. The showery rain will persist across many areas, with the heaviest and most persistent rain remaining across southeast Scotland. Overnight temperatures will remain relatively mild in the south, holding around 7 to 9 degrees. Further north, particularly in Scotland, we'll see temperatures dropping to around 4 to 6 degrees in most areas, though sheltered glens could see temperatures dipping to 2 or 3 degrees where skies clear briefly. The wind won to ease off much overnight. Those blustery conditions will continue, particularly around coastal areas and over higher ground. If you are planning any travel this evening, be aware that driving conditions could be challenging, especially in areas of heavy rain and on exposed routes. Looking ahead to tomorrow, Thursday, the pattern continues. We're re-looking at further showers or longer spells of rain. The most persistent rain will affect western areas, particularly West Wales and Western Scotland. Eastern areas may see some drier interludes, but don't expect anything prolonged. Any breaks in the cloud will be brief. Temperature-wise tomorrow, we're re-looking at similar values to today. The south will see highs of 9 to 11 degrees Celsius. The Midlands and northern England will be cooler, around 6 to 8 degrees. Scotland remains the coldest part of the country, with temperatures struggling to get above 6 or 7 degrees in most areas and staying at 3 to 4 degrees in the far north. The snow on higher ground in Scotland will continue. We are talking about elevations above 300 metres or around 1,000 feet. Below that altitude, it's rain or sleet. But if you were in the Scottish Highlands or on the higher peaks of the Grampians, you are dealing with proper snow. It's been accumulating throughout the day, and that will continue overnight and into tomorrow. Friday brings more of the same. The unsettled weather pattern shows no sign of breaking down. We'll see further showery outbreaks, some of them heavy, and the blustery winds will persist. The low pressure systems just keep coming off the Atlantic. This is the sort of weather pattern that can establish itself and stick around for days, sometimes weeks, during winter. Now, let's look at the weekend. Saturday and Sunday are looking similarly unsettled. We're really not seeing any high pressure building in to settle things down. The models suggest another area of low pressure will track close to the UK on Saturday, bringing another round of heavy rain and strong winds. This one looks like it might track further south than the current system, which means southern areas of England could see heavier rain than they've experienced in the past few days. Wind speeds on Saturday could pick up quite considerably. We could be looking at gusts of 40 to 50 miles per hour quite widely, with coastal areas and exposed hills seeing gusts of 60 miles per hour or higher. That is enough to make travel difficult and to cause some disruption. Keep an eye on the forecast as we get closer to Saturday, because if this system tracks as currently expected, we might see warnings issued. Sunday doesn't look much better. The low pressure will have moved through, but we'll be in the showery flow behind it. That means scattered heavy showers, some thundery, affecting many areas. Between the showers, there will be some brightness, but those showers will be heavy when they come through. Temperature-wise, we are looking at near average values for the time of year throughout the weekend. Highs of 7 to 10 degrees across much of England and Wales, cooler further north. Now, I want to put this in some context. This sort of unsettled January weather is not unusual for the United Kingdom. Many of you will remember previous winters with similar patterns. January typically brings challenging weather, with high rainfall totals and limited sunshine. What we're seeing now is classic Atlantic winter weather. However, it's worth noting that the persistence of this pattern is notable. We've been in this unsettled spell for several days now, and it is set to continue through at least the middle of next week. That's a week or more of showery rain and blustery winds. It's the sort of weather that can wear you down, particularly when you're not seeing much sunshine. For comparison, if we look back at January 2023, we saw a similar pattern establish itself for a fortnight. That January was one of the milder ones in recent years, but also one of the wettest. We're not at those rainfall totals yet this year, but we're heading in that direction if this pattern persists. The Great Storm of '87, which many of you will remember, was a very different beast. That was an explosive cyclogenesis, a rapidly deepening low-pressure system that brought gusts exceeding 100 miles per hour. What we're seeing now is not that. These are regular Atlantic depressions, nothing exceptional in terms of wind speeds or rainfall intensity. But the persistence of the pattern is what makes it notable. Similarly, the Burnsday Storm of 1990 was an exceptionally powerful system. That brought gusts of 107 miles per hour in some locations and caused widespread disruption. Again, what we are experiencing now is milder than that, but it is still weather that requires attention and preparation. So what should you be doing to prepare for this continuing unsettled spell? First, practical clothing. The Met Office advice is sound. Wrap up warm with several layers. In these blustery conditions with rain, you want a good waterproof outer layer. Don't rely on a single thick coat. Layers trap air and keep you warmer, and you can adjust them as needed. Carry waterproofs or an umbrella when heading out. I know that sounds obvious, but on days like this, you'll be caught out if you don't. The showers can be heavy, and in the wind, an umbrella might not be much use. A good waterproof jacket with a hood is your best bet. If you are driving, take extra care. Spray from other vehicles on the motorway reduces visibility significantly. Surface water on roads can lead to aquaplaning. In strong winds, high-sided vehicles are particularly vulnerable. Give yourself extra time for journeys and reduce your speed in poor conditions. For those in Scotland dealing with snow on higher ground, if you're replanning any hill walking or mountain activities, please check the latest conditions before you go. The snow is accumulating, visibility is poor at times, and the wind is making conditions challenging. If you're not experienced in winter hill conditions, consider postponing your plans. Around the home, secure anything in the garden that could blow around in strong winds. Garden furniture, bins, trampolines, these can all become hazards in wind. If you have vulnerable neighbors, particularly elderly people living alone, check in on them. This sort of weather can be isolating, and a phone call or a quick visit can make a real difference. Flood warnings are in place in some areas, particularly in Somerset. If you live in a flood-prone area, you should have your flood plan ready. Know where your important documents are, where you would go if you needed to evacuate, and keep an eye on updates from the Environment Agency. Most flooding from this pattern is likely to be surface water flooding from the heavy rainfall rather than river flooding, but some river levels are rising in areas that have seen persistent rain. For farmers and those working outdoors, this is challenging weather. Livestock need checking regularly. In wet, windy conditions, animals can struggle, particularly younger stock. Ensure they have adequate shelter and that water troughs aren't overflowing with rainwater. Gardeners should be aware that the persistent rain is keeping soil saturated. This isn't the time for working the soil or planting anything. If you had any drainage issues in your garden, you're probably noticing them now. Once this unsettled spell passes and we get some drier weather, that would be the time to address any drainage problems. Now, looking at the confidence levels in this forecast. For the next 48 hours, Thursday and Friday, we have high confidence. The models are in good agreement and the meteorological situation is well established. We know we are getting more showery rain and blustery winds. The uncertainty is mainly around the exact timing and location of the heaviest showers, but the overall pattern is clear. For the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we have good confidence in the overall pattern, unsettled with further rain and strong winds, but less confidence in the specific details. That low pressure system I mentioned for Saturday, its exact track will determine which areas see the heaviest rain and strongest winds. A shift of 50 miles in the track makes a significant difference. So keep checking the forecast as we get closer to Saturday. Beyond Sunday, into next week, the confidence drops. The models are less certain about whether this unsettled pattern will finally break down or continue. The ECMWF is hinting at the possibility of things settling down midweek, but the GFS keeps the unsettled pattern going. This is typical uncertainty at that range. We RE 6 or 7 days out, and at that distance, small changes in the atmospheric setup can lead to different outcomes. What I can say is that there's no sign of any significant cold spell or winter weather for the southern half of the UK in the next week. Temperatures will remain near or slightly above average. For those of you in East Anglia and the southeast waiting for some proper winter cold and the possibility of snow, I'm afraid you'll be waiting a bit longer. This Atlantic pattern just doesn't support cold air reaching the south. Scotland, you re-closest to the colder air, hence the snow on higher ground. But even there, we are not talking about a beast from the east situation. That would require high pressure over Scandinavia and low pressure to the south, drawing continental air westwards across the UK. We're not seeing that setup at all. What we have is westerly and southwesterly winds, Atlantic air masses, classic mild but unsettled conditions. For those interested in the technical details, the jet stream is running fairly strong and not far north of its typical position. It's got a reasonably straight west to east orientation, which is why these low pressure systems are tracking directly across the UK rather than passing to the north or south. If the jet stream were to shift significantly north or south, we do see a change in the weather pattern. But for now, it's locked in place. The North Atlantic Oscillation Index is currently neutral to slightly positive, which typically favours unsettled, mild conditions for the UK in winter. If it were to shift strongly negative, we'd be more likely to see high pressure build and potentially colder conditions. But that S not showing up in the forecasts at the moment. Sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic are close to average for the time of year, perhaps fractionally above average in some areas. This provides plenty of moisture for these weather systems as they track eastwards towards us. That S why the rainfall totals are adding up. Each system is tapping into that Atlantic moisture. One more thing I should mention, air quality. In these breezy conditions, air quality is generally good as pollutants get dispersed. But if you in an urban area and we get a brief lull in the wind, particularly overnight, you might notice a drop in air quality as pollutants build up temporarily. For most people, this won't be an issue, but if you have respiratory conditions, be aware. So, to summarize, we in an established, unsettled pattern that is going to continue through at least the weekend and probably into next week. Showery rain, blustery winds, temperatures near average but feeling colder because of the wind and rain. Scotland is seeing the coldest conditions with snow on higher ground. The south is milder but wetter. This isn't extreme weather, but it's the sort of persistent, unsettled spell that requires steady preparation and caution. Check the forecast regularly, particularly if you have travel plans for the weekend. Keep an eye on any flood warnings if you're in a vulnerable area. Look after yourself and keep an eye on vulnerable neighbours. The models will be updated twice daily and the forecast will be refined as we get closer to each day. If there are any significant changes, particularly regarding that weekend low pressure system, you will hear about it. For now, expect more of what we've been experiencing. Grey skies, showery rain and those blustery winds. January in the United Kingdom, this is what it brings. Stay warm, stay dry.